Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Today's video is a recap of the weekend at Darlington. The Lady in Black left some drivers black and blue, both physically with many cars taking a beating on their right sides, and emotionally. Another heartbreaker for an understandably upset Chris Buescher. I have the radio from the number 17 car the moment Tyler Reddick ran him up into the wall. He was as hot as a Texas summer in August. However, before we get to that, let's go back to Friday night and the Truck Series race. I don't have a whole lot to say about it except Ross Chastain had another watermelon-smashing victory celebration, but the more interesting story for me is what happened earlier in the race. Much earlier, like lap 3 earlier, when Kyle Busch spun in his first ever trip to Darlington in a truck. He finished 32nd and in last place for the first time in the trucks. Unfortunately, it was a bad omen of things to come. This being throwback weekend, there were definitely some pretty cool schemes throughout the weekend's races, including Parker Reslov throwing it back to Harry Gant and the Skull Car in the Xfinity Series, and Kyle Larson honoring Terry Labonte in the Kellogg's car. But not everyone participated. Joey Logano was one of those who opted out, and when the two-time champion made his qualifying lap, Kevin Harvick didn't sugarcoat what he thought about it.
Well, okay, this one, they didn't play this week.
No, this one's definitely a fail. I mean, it's a great classic scheme, but it is definitely fail for the throwback weekend.
Harvick wasn't done. He also called out Logano's Penske teammate and the PR team.
But that is the graphic scheme of the all-electric semi-tractor that Freightliner is building in limited numbers. EV. Fail.
I'm gonna put that in the fail category. Yep. Against the rule, trying to put a PR spin on it. We're gonna have to do better next year.
I know I have talked about the good run for Chase Elliott and the number 9 team in the last month or so. During qualifying, the driver knew extending that hot streak might be an issue based on how his car was driving. Take a listen.
14th there. Yikes. That's pretty pathetic. Yeah, all into 3, I think.
After Cup qualifying, the Xfinity Series took to the track. Justin Allgaier dominated, leading a race-high 119 laps and finally broke through for his first win of 2024. Hailie Deegan had a rough day, finishing 36 after being involved in what appeared to be a single-car spin by the rookie driver. But no one knew for sure what happened. Don't believe me? Listen to what Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski had to say about it.
I wonder what happened here.
Well, it seemed like before she got into the corner there, it
blew out on her. Nice job keeping it off the wall for Hailie.
You got to think that, I mean, either she ran over someone or had contact.
After the race, the 22-year-old felt compelled to get out her side of the story, apparently understanding that Fox cameras shockingly failed to show what had happened. How compelled? She hadn't posted on Twitter or X since February 23rd, and that was a repost of her boyfriend. Here's what she had to say. Before everyone jumps to conclusions, I was on the top lane and the 07 who was a lap down doored me off turn 4 and it cut my left rear tire. I kept it out of the wall when my tire shredded, but without the door foam, we weren't allowed to keep going. Not my fault, they don't have a replay. How about that for a parting shot for Fox? Sound familiar? It should. This is what Dawson Cram said in the last Xfinity Series race 2 weeks ago at Dover after another incident with Deegan. Since there's no replay, you can very clearly see me check up when it became obvious the 15 thought she was clear and wasn't. Hate to see cars are torn up, but that was a racing deal. Fox and missing a replay. Name a more iconic duo. Moving on to Sunday and the Cup Series action. And if I'm being totally honest, and I always am with you guys, I didn't see any of the pre-race action because my wonderful wife and a couple of my daughters went to visit the cemetery for the first time on Mother's Day. It was a painful moment, but all part of the grieving process. And then we took my wife out to a delicious lunch and celebrated with her. After giving my wife her gifts, it was time for the green flag. There are a couple of notable things in that first stage. Tyler Reddick started on the pole and surged out in front early. leading the first 37 laps before the first green flag pit cycle. The other big story in Stage 1 was Chase Elliott's concerns during qualifying carried over into the race. In the first stage, he lingered near the back, eventually making his way somewhat forward and finishing 26th to end the stage. Elliott's teammate Kyle Larson had no such problems and won the stage for his Cup Series leading 7th stage win of the year. Early in the second stage, Kyle Busch got into the wall for a second time, continuing what was an ugly weekend for the two-time champ. Speaking of champs and walls, the reigning Cup champ Ryan Blaney's day came to an end in Stage 2, and it all started on a restart when William Byron made it 3 wide, slid up the track, and squeezed Martin Truex Jr., who got into Blaney on the outside, who then tagged the fence hard. The Team Penske driver talked to Jamie Little a few minutes later and said after watching the video he had every right to be mad, seeing that Byron used up more of the racetrack than he originally thought. On lap 146 in the halfway point of the race, the Fords had to feel good for the first time in a long time with the top 10, because it included 4 blue ovals, including Brad Keselowski in 3rd, Joey Logano 6th, and Chris Buescher and Josh Berry running 8th and 9th. Tyler Reddick was impressive on multiple restarts with great fire-off and led the stage from start to finish, earning his 2nd stage win of the year. Also of note, Chase Elliott's car came to life in that stage. He moved forward and finished 16th. Unfortunately, on the stage break pit stop, Elliott's hard work was erased when the team had trouble on the right rear and he dropped all the way back to 31st. Going into that final stage, there were 2 main storylines developing. The first being the possible end to Ford's and Brad Keselowski's 110 race drought, running up front from the drop of the green flag, including finishing 3rd and 2nd in the first 2 stages. And the other story was Ty Gibbs. The Joe Gibbs Racing driver was equally impressive in those first couple of stages, finishing 2nd and 3rd, respectively. In that final stage, I was listening to Ty Gibbs' radio to hear what the team was telling the young driver. Then, this happened.
I know you're frustrated. Just lock in, man. Some guys will be starting 2 stops here. Some guys will be starting 1 stop in a few laps. So, it's important to get all we can for these last few. Okay, I'm back in.
Gibbs's frustration was directed at JGR teammate Denny Hamlin. While weird, at least he wasn't dropping F-bombs like a few weeks ago. I call that progress. On lap 215, Reddick had surged out to a 4+ second lead over Keselowski. Just 10 laps later, it was down to under a second. The RFK Racing co-owner driver made the pass on lap 225 to take the lead for the 2nd time. With the laps winding down and tire fall-off becoming an issue on a long green flag cycle, Kyle Larson was one of the many who got into the wall with his right side. With 40 to go, the 2021 champ flipped the script and spun, sliding against the wall on his left side, ending his day. He finished 34th. On the next restart, it was a great battle between Reddick and Keselowski for the lead that lasted for several laps. Then Keselowski's teammate Chris Buescher joined the party with 29 laps to go and got a 2-for-1 special, passing both cars to take the lead. Deja vu, anyone? A few laps later, Fox showed a graphic that I thought was interesting and telling, showing just how much of a struggle it's been this year for the Fords. I think the most interesting stat was the fact that the Fords have the same total of runner-up finishes as Toyota and Chevy combined. Always the bridesmaid, at least for a few more laps. With 10 laps to go, Reddick tried to dive bomb and do a slide job on the number 17 for the lead, and failed. I know we all saw how upset Buescher was after the race when he confronted the 2311 Racing driver on pit road. Take a listen to what he had to say right when the incident happened.
Fucker! So do we! Coming to you.
The Texan, who doesn't regularly show much emotion, was understandably unhappy. In the end, it was Buescher's teammate and team co-owner Keselowski who was the benefactor, taking advantage of the 2 cars tangling in front of him, passing them both, and holding off Ty Gibbs to win the race. While Keselowski's win was justifiably the top story, the track Too Tough to Tame produced some fascinating results in the top 10. Gibbs scored a career-best runner-up finish and was followed by rookie Josh Berry, who also scored a career-best finish. Another big surprise was Justin Haley, who finished 9th and scored the first-ever top 10 for Rick Ware Racing outside of a super speedway. Now, let's take a look at our weekly race line to see how the different drivers and teams progress throughout the race. We'll start with the race-winning team at RFK. You look at both drivers and you can see they were consistently good, both running inside the top 10 throughout the day until the very end. The incident with Reddick, a second sour finish in as many weeks for the number 17 team. Moving on to the runner-up finisher, and again, Ty Gibbs was impressive all day. However, his JGR teammates struggled by JGR standards, especially Martin Truex Jr. The incident with Byron and Blaney in Stage 2 adversely affected the number 19 team, which suffered its worst finish of the year. FYI, Denny Hamlin did lead a single lap and extended his streak of leading a lap to 17 races. Stewart-Haas Racing also had a good day with a couple of top 5s from Berry and Briscoe. Berry was unquestionably the best, steadily improving throughout the day. Noah Gragson had a similar improving race line but finished 14th, ending his streak of consecutive top 10 finishes at 3, and Ryan Preece finished 17th. One Ford team that struggled was Team Penske. Austin Cindric ran in the teens throughout the day and finished highest at 20th. Right behind him was Joey Logano, who was in position for a good finish after Stage 2, but dropped back in that final stage on that last pit stop. Hendrick Motorsports, which had won the most races this year at 6 and had 19 top finishes, did neither at Darlington. William Byron had a solid day all day and was the highest finisher in 6th. Alex Bowman languished mid-pack for most of the day, but moved up when it mattered most and finished 8th. Elliott rebounded from his bad pit stop and finished 12th. Another interesting team race line is that of Trackhouse Racing. Ross Chastain had an okay day, staying just outside of the top 10 for much of the day, but Daniel Suarez had a monumental struggle. Yikes. Another Chevy team that struggled was Richard Childress Racing. Kyle Busch and his run-ins with the wall kept the two-time champion running in the 20s for the whole day. Austin Dillon was consistent on his day, but not necessarily in a good way. And we'll wrap up with Rick Ware Racing. You can see by the race line, Justin Haley made solid progress throughout the day for his best finish with his new team. Kaz Grala also improved, saving his best for last in that final stage and finishing 18th. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. I want your thoughts on all of it. First up, what did you think about Throwback Weekend? Who were your favorites? Who were your, as Kevin Harvick puts it, fails? And what did you think of Hailie Deegan calling out Fox for not having a replay? And of course, what did you think of the race? Were you happy to see Brad and the Fords in their long winless streak? And what about Ty Gibbs? Do you think he's going to win a race this year? And who are your surprise finishers? Remember, if you want to read my written work, go check it out at heavy.com and beatingandbanging.com, where you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter, and you'll receive an email each Friday recapping the top stories from the week, including reviews of the various NASCAR-related podcasts. Also, make sure to check out my podcast, the Beating and Banging Podcast, on the Blue Wire Network. Thanks as always for supporting the channel, and have a great rest of your day.